Hi, I'm Robin Lisney, and I am the creator of this channel that you have on YouTube. And I'm also interested in sharing with you what I know about light and healing. And so this next video that I am sharing with you is really about light workers and what is it to be a light worker. So we're going to be looking at that and listening to the discussion that I had with several people that were on the Lightworker video. And if you want to find out more about my work, you can check it out at www.thecenterforthesoul.com or bluebonebooks.com. Great, thanks. Now we go to the show. We're going to be talking about what is a light worker. And I want to first begin by saying that most of you know that I've been doing work for over 30 years, bringing light to more people and trying to bring in more consciousness into the world. And what I've realized in doing that is that I am a light worker. And what is a light worker? A light worker is someone who commits to bringing more light through their bodies into the world. So what that means is, on a bigger scale, is that a light worker is here to commit to working on themselves first and foremost. That means that they're willing to look at their part of things, and they're also willing to see what fears and what angers come up for them so that they can witness them and release them. This is really important because the more we release our fears and angers, the more we bring in light to our systems, and the less we move in the world with a sense of anxiety. Now, there's a lot of anxiety going on in the world today. And the reason for that is because a lot of the fear and anger, there is more light coming into the planet through grace, through spirit. A lot of people are feeling this right now. It isn't something you can prove, but it is something you can feel. And in feeling that, what we understand is that what we're doing is we're moving ourselves into more and more consciousness. So in more and more consciousness, what we do when we're light workers is we have less fear, more joy, and we recognize the grid work of support that's all around us, which is really exciting. So what is that grid work? There's a grid work that is connecting all things in the planet. Now, if you think about that for a minute, this grid work connects those that are in fear, those that are in anxiety, those that are in challenge, as well as those that are full of love. And when we bring our light in, what we're actually doing is we're extending our light to that grid work to help others and to help ourselves to more of what is abundantly here on the planet. And what is abundantly here? What is life force itself? Life force itself is love. So in recognizing ourselves as light workers, what we're actually doing is we're recognizing ourselves as unconditional love. And we're recognizing that that is more important than any other thing on the planet right now, because that itself will transform our world. My work has been all about the fact that love heals all things. That's what my doctoral thesis was on. That's what I've worked with Heart Path and Heart Path Handbook. Those books have brought to people a way that we can love and transform the fears and angers into love. So as a light worker, what we're doing and who we are is we're embodying more and more of our own light. So the second thing that light workers do is we bring more awareness into situations where there is none. So when that happens, we are recognizing that there is some kind of deficit of consciousness, and we need to be there to bring our thoughts, our awareness, and our love to that situation. The tricky thing about that right now is that that requires us to recognize that we have something to offer, and so our self-esteem has to be high enough in order to do that. If our self-esteem is high enough, what we're recognizing is that we're bringing in some awareness that may not be there otherwise. And what that requires of us is patience. And our patience sometimes can be short because we think people should know this already. But the truth is, we're all in this together and we're all growing and learning together. So very often we don't know, they don't know exactly what's needed in the situation. But always in any situation, what's needed is more love. So, and more compassion. So very often, those of us who are light workers are always being stretched to have more compassion and more love in the situations that we find ourselves in. So that's the second part of being a light worker. The first is recognizing that we're here to bring our light into our bodies and release fear and anger. The second one is that we're bringing more awareness to other people. And the third thing that's very important about being a light worker is that right now, from now forward, what we're going to be doing as light workers is we're going to be recognizing that we are forming a grid work. We are part of the grid work already, but we're also forming a net of consciousness and love for other people to fall into or to come into so that they can also awaken. This is something that's really important because as we awaken, what we're doing is we're awakening others. We're grounding that light, bringing it into the earth, bringing it up from the earth, and then we don't have to think about it. We're just automatically releasing that into the bigger world. So that becomes very important because what we're doing is we're spreading the light just from our own presence and our own being. So those three major things are what a light worker is. The first is they are bringing light into the world. The second is that they're helping to bring light where there is none. And the third, or where there's little. And the third is that we're ultimately creating a web of peace with all other beings on the planet. And we're helping to mitigate the fears and angers and frustrations that they might have. So hopefully you can experience this for yourself. And what I'd like to do now is open it up for discussion and see if that resonates to you about being a light worker. So does anyone have anything to suggest or to talk about in regards to this?
Robin, I have a question.
Yes, yes.
How do you even know if you're awakened?
How do you know if you're awakened? Well, that's a really good question, Paola. And being awakened means it's really a process. I don't think the ideal is that it happens all at once and suddenly we're awake and we know we're awake. But my experience is that it happens in stages, and that at a certain point we need to claim and own that we are part of the light workers that are here to bring in that light to other people. That doesn't put us on a pedestal in any way. In fact, if you come into this, you really are coming into it in a very humble way. You're coming into it recognizing you have a job to do, and we've been in process with this job in humanity for many millennia, But right now we're at a time when we have to start owning our consciousness and our awareness. That doesn't mean that other people don't have awarenesses that we also need. It doesn't mean we're not learning lessons. We're all, again, in this together, and we're all learning those lessons together.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing that we're conscious or that we're awake helps us to understand that we're perceiving things that other people may not be perceiving, and that's how we know. Does that help? Does that help you, Paula?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So very often you may be the one, if you're a light worker, this happens a lot with light workers, we're the one that's bringing in the consciousness where other people are going, what? Oh, wow, I've never thought of that before. Or they're the ones who will say, well, that's a terrible idea. We shouldn't do that. They'll react negatively to it at first. But then as they think about it, they soften to it and they awaken to it. And they say, wow, how did you think of that? That was really important. That was a really important thing, that concept or idea that you brought to the table. So sometimes at work, we'll find awareness by suggesting something, and it's something no one else has thought of. So that's one way that we know that we're bringing in that consciousness and that awareness. And that doesn't just mean that we come out with brilliant ideas all the time. It may just be a small turn of awareness, just a small shift in awareness that we're bringing to others. So are there other questions?
Well, I have a question. Robin, part of when you were talking at the beginning, you said, light workers are committed to bringing more light to the world, and we need to commit to working on ourselves first. What are some of the things that we need to work on?
Oh, that's a really good thought, Eve. Thank you. One of the things we need to overcome is our fear of living or fear of expressing ourselves. Many of us have come into this world in this lifetime from many other lifetimes where we have been persecuted for bringing those new ideas. We've been burned at the stake. We have been, run out of town. We have been killed, murdered, let go because we had ideas that others couldn't tolerate because there was too much, it was too simple or too aware. Or sometimes we were just simply doing our work. We were herbalists, healers, we were midwives. And this time, what we have to do is recognize that we are past the time of persecution and we are now in the time of awakening. And that awakening is really important. So, but we also have a lot of bodily and spiritual fear around it. My first book was on ritual, the first book I wrote called Dancing Up the Moon. And I had to go through lifetime after lifetime of fear of being persecuted to get that book published. And my inner work doing that was as critical to the book's success as actually getting it published and getting it written. So that's an example of how the work that we're here to do might be terrifying to us. It might be terrifying to think of quitting a job and getting another one. It might be terrifying to think of starting a private practice in energy healing, or to start a massage therapy practice, or to do other kinds of alternative work that actually help people embody the light. But that's our job. It's like that's what we're assigned to do. And then we have to trust whatever it is that we're getting, whatever impetus we're getting in ourselves, that this is what we have to do. It may take a couple of years to unfold. It may not happen just instantly. Sometimes my guides will give me information like, well, we want you to start teaching this, or we want you to start teaching that. And I'll go like, well, wait a minute. I don't have anything in place yet to have that happen. And so then they'll say things like, well, this may take us several years. It's like, oh, okay, thanks. It's not something for this quarter. So very often the timing between spirit, the information that we get, and our implementation may be very different. Maybe in Earth years, it may seem like a long time, like several years, but in spirit terms, it may be a flash of an eye. So 5 years is really not that long to them. So, but, you know, it is an unfolding process, and it becomes obvious when we need to take the next step.
Okay, great.
That's the beautiful thing about this unfolding process. We don't have to jump into what we think we have to do right away. There may be education we have to get, or there may be other people that we have to meet first. And if we're not there, we're not there. And so, but when we are there, then the step is like just naturally taking the next step and not leaping off the cliff. Does that answer your question, Eve?
Yep, that's great.
Okay. Any other questions about being a light worker and what that means?
I have another question.
Yes.
So, like the process of facing your fears and facing like life challenges seems never ending. So then how do you know when is it the right time to start working with others if you just realize that it might take you your whole lifetime to just solve your own issues?
Yes, that's true. It might. You always have to come back to the self. You can work for years on yourself, and sometimes it takes several lifetimes. But in this lifetime, what's happening that's pretty exciting is that things are accelerating. They're actually accelerating. So in that acceleration, what we used to be able to do what I used to be able to do with clients in 1 or 2 sessions in the past, or 2 or 3 or 4 sessions, now I can do in less than like 15 minutes or a half hour. So we can cut through issues really quickly with the different processes that are getting downloaded by myself and other practitioners, which is really exciting, because what it means is we don't have to stay in therapy for 35 years, you know, before we get the realization that we can, or even 10 years, or even 5 years. Sometimes things are moving so quickly now that it's like, okay, you've got this issue, let's deal with it, let's move on, and then integrate that, and now we're on to the next thing. And what I have discovered is that while we may even come into full awakening in this lifetime, we still have issues to deal with. We still have things that may come up with other people. And that's okay. That's part of the schoolhouse earth that we live in. This is a place to learn and grow. There's no doubt about it. The Mother Earth is set up for us to unbelievably and gracefully learn more and more about who we really are. And as we do that, we let go of those fears and those false identities, and we come into full awakening. And even as an awakened person, and I would say I am awakened, I still have a lot of things I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis with other people. It's just the way it is. And I actually kind of relish that now. I relish the interactions and the connections with others, because I'm learning, and I'm in that humble place of understanding and learning while they're learning, you see. I learn so much from the people I work with. I learn a lot in each session. And if I ever stop that, I'll quit. Because it's so exciting to me to just started doing Akashic record readings, for instance. And in those Akashic record readings, I learned so much in each reading. It's like, oh, I never knew that. I didn't see that people came in from different parts of the earth and the sky, and there are two parts here of themselves they're trying to work through. You know, there's so much I learn in every session. So what's exciting for me is that in this place of Schoolhouse Earth, as a light worker, I'm bringing awareness to them, but they're also bringing awareness to me. So it's very often a cooperative experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't have to know it all right now to start being a light worker. Mm-hmm. We just have to claim that that's part of our job. And if it isn't our job, I've asked people, do you think you're a light worker? And they will come up with, no, I don't even know what that is, and I don't really want to know. There are some people on the planet that aren't interested in the light. They're not interested in unconditional love. They're here to learn lessons, and they're here to understand things about the planet, but they're not into transformation, and they don't really care about that. So at least that's what I'm learning. That's one of the things I'm learning. If you care about love and you care about consciousness and you care about bringing that to other people, you are most likely a light worker. And if you resonate with that term, light worker, then you can see that, oh, that's what my mission is. That's what my job is. There's a mission I have here that I have to complete. Mm-hmm. And when you feel that kind of urge or that kind of impetus, that kind of motivation that's so compelling to you that there's no real choice in having other options for you, like this is very important to you, then you will follow that breadcrumb trail to what it is you're really here to do. And sometimes you know what it is and you just don't know how to get there. So sometimes it's a step-by-step process of learning what you need to do in order to get to the next step. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Any other questions? These are great questions, by the way. I really appreciate it.
How to get there?
How to get there? Well, like anything else, if you have a motivation in a particular direction, there are steps you can take, and pretty much at different times, there's like a step that you need to take that you know you need to take, and you just have to put your foot down and move yourself there. So you don't start with the end goal necessarily. You start with where you are right now. And you might have that end goal in sight, like say I want to transform education, or I want to work with children, or I want to work with individual clients, and I want to work in a hospital setting. You know, there may be 100 other things that people might be motivated to do. Or I'm just being with my family, and I want to be with my family and give my love to that community, my own individual community. That's enough. Everything that we have that's inspiring to us is enough. And what's happening right now is people are getting motivated to do more. They're getting motivated to do big work that could be international, national, on a bigger scale. And if you're meant to do that work, you will find your way. And the other part of it is you're not alone. I mean, I think the other thing that lightworkers have to recognize is that they have guidance and they have support, and they have so much more support than they realize, that all they have to do is ask, and it will be given to you. You ask for what it is you're needing, and your job is to identify what you need. Okay, so sometimes that's not easy. Sometimes you have to sit down and, do flow charts. or you have to figure out what it is that you're actually needing and what you need to ask for. That's your job. But then the other part of it is then to let go and ask for it to come in a divine order and divine timing. And those two things are very important in being a light worker, divine order and divine timing. So timing is so much of unfolding as a light worker. And it's certainly true of anyone who's into personal growth. As you unfold, so then opens opportunities for you to receive what it is you're needing. You see? So it becomes an opportunity for you to recognize, what is it I need? How do I get there? Who do I call? How do I make a connection? Who might know about this? How can I find out XYZ about salary range or opportunities, or what I could possibly make in terms of financial support? Because the financial support is part of what we also need as light workers, unless we're independently wealthy. If we're independently wealthy, then you can create whatever you want. But if you're not independently wealthy, you have to figure out the money part too. And that is also something you can be guided to learn. So I find that as my life has progressed, I've gotten better at all those different areas. I've gotten better at figuring out the money part. I've gotten better at figuring out what it is I actually need to produce, whether it's a book or a seminar or a talk or a workshop or participant, people coming in for sessions. All of those things can feed into the things that I'm needing to do with the next steps of my work. So does that make sense? Or more questions?
Yeah.
I think it's important to recognize that as a light worker, what you're doing, first and foremost, and we keep coming back to this, is you're bringing in consciousness, first to yourself, then to others, and then to a larger network. So one of the beauties of being a light worker is I know that just my presence is making a difference. Now, I can make a difference laying in the hammock, or I can make a difference taking actions and making things happen. And I do both. Sometimes the best thing I can do is go lay in the hammock for the afternoon and read a book. And other days, it's the action day, and then all of a sudden things are flooding in and ideas are flooding in. So work-life balance becomes really important when you're a light worker, because you need to recognize that you need rest and you need to support yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. So you cannot be a light worker and have your pedal to the metal 24/7. Doesn't work, because it'll harm you. It'll eventually harm you and harm your body. So you have to be nice to your body. Recognize your body cells are trying to bring in more light, and your cells are actually releasing the fears. So it's very important to recognize the expression that you have and what you need and what your physical needs are, what your emotional needs are, what your mental needs, your spiritual needs. All of those are part of being a light worker. Doesn't exempt us from anything. It just brings us into more awareness that we have a job to do. Does that make sense? Is it scary? Or does it sound like, yes, that's me? I know that's me.
I think that's me.
Yes, I think so. Yes. Yeah.
Robin, what is changing? Why now is like the process and the evolution is moving faster?
Say that again, Paula.
I'm wondering what's changing. Why the energy is now different? So things seems to be like changing
Yes.
faster.
Can you feel it? You can feel it in your own life.
Yes.
Yes. What's changing is that there are a huge number of souls on the other side in spirit that are, and Mother Earth herself is changing. Mother Earth is not a static thing, as you all know. She's a living being. And she made the commitment many years ago that she was coming into full consciousness and awareness as a divine being. She is a divine being. So she's sending light up from the earth. She's radiating her consciousness, just like we can radiate our consciousness. And then there are all these spirits in the upper worlds, in the spiritual realms, angels, divas, spirits, archangels, that are helping and working with the earth right now and working with people on the planet. And they're just downloading a ton of energy right now. Since the beginning of this year, I have witnessed in clients and in all kinds of people that I've worked with that the light is coming into their crown and it gets stuck about right here, about power chakra level. And then they have to clean out and release the fears and angers and anxieties that they have. So the light then kind of pushes on that fear and the anxiety, the anger, and they have to release it. They have to release it. So usually that's what they're coming in for, is to release another layer of fear or anger. And when they do that, and again, in a few sessions, you can get people to release a lot of fear and anger that would have taken, years ago, it would have taken like 2 or 3 months. Now it can be done in one session, and it happens really fast. It's pretty exciting to watch. And then here comes another layer, and then we get into another layer of fear and anger that comes up out of our subconscious, out of past lives. But there is an end to it. I mean, I want to say that you don't have to be constantly digging out the fears and angers. At a certain point, you are more light than you are fear, anger. And then what happens is really miraculous. It's like spirit takes over. There's a tipping point, and then it just starts happening to you. You start feeling it, whether or not you're conscious of it. A few weeks ago, I was working with someone who was working on me, and actually I was out in nature, and I was with a friend of mine, and the two of us were meditating and praying. And I laid on the earth in this beautiful amphitheater with, bay trees everywhere, and redwoods are all around us. And I laid down, and I heard this voice say, she thinks she has to do it all herself. And I started laughing, and I could feel the energy of Mother Earth just coming right up through me. And then the spirits of Father Sky, this feeling of divine grace coming down through me as well. And I realized that something had shifted enough so that I could just spontaneously open. And I didn't have to feel afraid. There was nothing to be afraid of. I was just feeling the grace of life force moving through my body. And it was ecstatic. It was lovely. And it's there all the time for us. See, it's there all the time for us. So we don't have to do it all, but we do have to put our foot on the path. We do have to say, okay, I am going to do this, and I am connecting to this. And I want to be a part of this grid work, this Lightworker peace network that can then make a difference on the planet. You're already seeing evidence of this if you look at politics. You can already see the evidence of this shifting. It's starting to shift. With the new election coming up, there are people talking about we need more love, we need more consciousness, we need to take care of the environment, we need to take care of people's health care. There's a whole new conversation that's coming in now. And that I think that there's also a lot of important recognition that we have to be the ones to do it. That it takes all of us to do it. It doesn't just take one person or one president. It takes many people joining hands and coming together. And that's what's happening right now, which is really exciting. So are there any other questions or comments, things you want to share?
Is there any kind of a community, or how to be close to like-minded people? Because when you go outside, sometimes it's really hard.
Right. Well, that's why we need to come together. And that's why I'd like to see us form a community around Lightworkers. I'm going to start a course coming up probably later this summer or early in the fall that will be about how do we connect with one another, and also how do we form those communities. So I think it is hard, it is challenging, but it doesn't have to be so hard or so challenging that it's impossible, because it all begins with our own spiritual practice and what it is we need for ourselves. We have to include ourselves in those that we serve. And that's an important thing. A lot of women in particular give and give and give to everybody else, but they also need to receive, and they also need to acknowledge that they have needs too. So how do we begin? Well, we're beginning tonight, which is really exciting. We're beginning now by recognizing, first of all, that's who I am. I am a light worker, and I'm here to bring more consciousness and more light, more love to the planet. That's my commitment. And that's my my job. However I do it, and the thing that's beautiful is it doesn't really matter how you do it. You can be in business, you can be in your company or your corporation, and sometimes it's just it's not separating the workplace from our spiritual time. It's actually using our spiritual tools in the workplace so that we can bring more consciousness there. Because it really doesn't matter what we're doing, although in some circumstances I would disagree with that statement, but I think for the most part, what we're doing and whatever scale we can do it on is what we need to do. And so, we can help one person, and that's helping a lot. That's helping a lot. We can help a small group, and that's helping a lot. So we don't have to, we can work within our own circle and with our own community. I also think it does help to have support, in terms of weekly support or weekly groups. I know I go join meditation groups. I'm part of the meditation community in Scotts Valley, and I go up there every week and I meditate with other people. And that really helps renew my energy and helps give me support with friends that I have there. So we have to find our community and our support where we can find it. And maybe it's a church community, maybe it's a meditation community, or maybe it's listening to videos on YouTube, like this one that will be posted soon. So it is, we have to get a circle of support around us. I think that's really important. So, does that answer your question, Paula? Well, I want to thank you for joining me tonight, and I want to thank you for being a part of this. This is the first in a series of videos and seminars that I'm going to be doing, and I'm very excited about it because I'm hoping to help create and form the network of support for each other, for other people. So I thank you all for being here. I'm Robin White-Turtle-Listening, and I'm excited to share this with you tonight. And if anyone is interested that sees this later, my website is www.thecenterforthesoul.com. And I look forward to seeing you online.